In a distant land, there lived a wise old sage named Gautam. Gautam was known throughout the land as a great teacher and philosopher, and many people came to seek his counsel on matters of the heart and mind. One day, a young man came to Gautam and said, "O wise one, I seek your guidance on how to live a happy life. What is the secret to finding true happiness?" Gautam smiled and said, "My son, happiness is not something that can be found. It is something that must be cultivated within oneself. The secret to a happy life lies not in external circumstances, but in the way one approaches life itself." The young man was puzzled. "What do you mean, Gautam?" he asked. Gautam replied, "Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a king who was known throughout his kingdom as a wise and just ruler. One day, he summoned all of his ministers and advisors to the palace and asked them to find the secret to happiness. The ministers and advisors searched high and low, seeking the answer to the king's question. They scoured ancient texts, consulted with wise men and women from far and wide, and meditated for hours on end. But no matter how hard they looked, they could not find the secret to happiness. Finally, one day, a young servant girl came to the palace and said to the king, "Your Majesty, I know the secret to happiness." The king was intrigued. "What is it, my dear?" he asked. The servant girl replied, "The secret to happiness lies in contentment." The king was surprised. "What do you mean?" he asked. The servant girl explained, "Happiness is not something that can be found in the pursuit of wealth or power. It is something that must be found within oneself. The key to happiness is to be content with what one has and to find joy in the simple things in life." The king was impressed with the servant girl's wisdom, and he made her a member of his court. From that day forward, he followed her advice and found true happiness in the simple things in life. The young man listened to Gautam's story with rapt attention. "But how does one cultivate contentment within oneself?" he asked. Gautam replied, "Contentment comes from within. It is not something that can be bought or acquired through external means. To cultivate contentment, one must learn to be grateful for what one has, rather than always seeking more. One must learn to live in the present moment, rather than always looking to the future. And one must learn to find joy in the simple things in life, rather than always seeking the extraordinary." The young man thought about Gautam's words for a moment. "But how does one learn to be grateful?" he asked. Gautam replied, "Gratitude is a practice, my son. It is something that must be cultivated over time. One can start by making a list of all the things that one is grateful for each day, no matter how small or insignificant they may seem. One can also practice gratitude by taking the time to thank others for their kindness and generosity. And one can cultivate gratitude by learning to see the beauty in the world around us, even in the midst of difficult times." The young man nodded thoughtfully. "And how does one learn to live in the present moment?" he asked. Gautam replied, "Living in the present moment is a practice as well. It requires mindfulness and awareness. One can start by taking a few minutes each day to sit in meditation or simply be still and observe the world around them. This helps to quiet the mind and bring one's focus to the present moment. One can also practice mindfulness by paying attention to one's breath, noticing the sensations in one's body, and observing one's thoughts without judgment. Over time, this practice can help one to become more present and aware in every moment of life." The young man smiled. "Thank you, Gautam. I will take your words to heart and work to cultivate contentment, gratitude, and mindfulness in my life." Gautam smiled back at the young man. "Remember, my son, happiness is not a destination, but a journey. It is not something that can be found, but something that must be cultivated within oneself. With patience, persistence, and practice, you can find true happiness and live a fulfilling life.